Firework is a pop song with simple 4-bar phrases, each with 4 chords. In the key of A flat, it's these chords, the 1 chord, the 2 chord, which is minor, the 6 chord, which is also minor, and the 4 chord. So what happens when you take such a simple harmonic pattern and give it to this guy? Jesus Molina is a Colombian jazz pianist and multi-instrumentalist and just everything, I guess? Back in 2015, Jesus released a casual cover of Katy Perry's Firework, but reharmonized completely. I won't play the original audio for copyright reasons, so I made a transcription to look at what Jesus used to make that reharmonization. We will be looking at a keyboard so that we can easily see Jesus' keyboard magic. So, before we get into it, what are the chords that he uses? Does he stay within the original 1, 2, 6, 4 chord structure? Does he use any passing chords, whether they be diatonic or chromatic? Does he harmonize the melody with any chords that are outside of the key? Does he play any 2-5-1 progressions? And more practically, what are some of the voicings that he tends to use? Does he have a variety, or are they repetitive? Right off the bat, Jesus establishes his tonal center with the 1 chord, just like the original version. So nothing crazy yet. Maybe we can say that the added B flat in the voicing adds a slight color to the voicing, but overall it still resembles the original chord. Right as we discuss our self-worth, we see a grace note neo-soul-like inflection in octaves. This is a flat 7 chord, which doesn't naturally or diatonically belong in A flat major, but it does share a lot of notes in common with it. It's especially fitting for our self-worth since the melody blends well with the harmony. Continuing onwards, we see repetition of the flat 7 chord idea, but now a half step down in the bass, with what we would call a D flat major chord in first inversion with an added second note in the inflection. And yet again, we see this pattern another half step down in the bass. This time, it's an E major 7 or an E major 6, depending on what part of the inflection you're talking about. I mean, technically, it's an F flat major 7, but really, F flat, yeah, no. Cool thing to realize though is that this is basically a whole step down from the bar before the previous bar. These 2 chords are known as the flat 7 major chord and the flat 6 major chord respectively. So if it sounds a little confusing, that's because these flats indicate that these chords come from a different type of A flat scale, specifically A flat natural minor. A normal A flat major scale cannot produce a major chord on the 6th degree nor on the 7th degree on the scale. But just know this, the flat 6 and the flat 7 chords take us back nicely to home, which is 1, which is A flat. This is also known as the Super Mario cadence, an ascending series of chords separated by a whole step. Okay, so when we talk about wanting to start again, we land on the 1 chord, but in second inversion with an E flat in the bass and with an extra embellishment. And right as we repeat the same lyric and same melody that was in the first bar, we land on this chord. What is this chord? Well, it's the first chord that we'll encounter that's out of the key of A flat major, or really any A flat scale. I mean, yeah, you could argue that it's from the A flat Lydian dominant scale, but such a chord with these little extensions going on, yeah, that doesn't sit right with me. Don't at me on that. What we can agree on, though, is that the melody note, middle C, gave Jesus the possibility to play that chord with a rhythm that displaces our feel slightly. Next, we're followed up by a chord that's a half step lower than the D7, sharp 9, sharp 5, and that is this nice voicing of a D flat minor 6 add 9. Which is basically a version of the minor 4 chord, D flat minor, which in a lot of cases tends to take us back to 1. But here it doesn't. It flows nicely into the flat 7 chord, which is G flat major 9, which we've already looked at. And like last time too, it goes into the flat 6 chord, E major 9. So we can at least start to see one recurring usage of chords, the flat 7 to the flat 6 to 1. Now, in this verse where the melody jumps to feel like a higher, more exciting version of its previous self, Jesus starts off with a descent in the A flat major scale, from 1 to 7 to 6, and then a jump to the 2 chord, but with a twist. Well, it's not really a 2 chord, but it does have a 2 bass note. It's a G flat major 9 in first inversion with this voicing, with a B flat in the bass. And remember, it's the bass note that determines the inversion and not the many possible arrangements of the notes above it. The notes in this chord connect us with what Jesus Molina does next, and that is a 2-5-1 in the key of D flat. We are in A flat, so a 2-5-1 looks like this. In the key of D flat, we have this. So we temporarily make the D flat a local 1 chord, because these chords tend to lead back home. But as you know, this isn't the true home. It's the 4 of home, which is originally A flat. Now, instead of the voicings I just used, Jesus implies it with a voicing that doesn't explicitly lay out the 2 chord and the 5 chord and the 1 chord. Instead, it's this: an E flat on the bass, a C note on top, and then a fill-in of inner voices with inner fingers. Altogether, you can say that this chord is an E flat minor 9 add 6, or you can say that this is a 2 chord, mixed in with notes that you'd find in a 5 chord. Either way though, we land on a D flat major add 6 via the means of a bluesy inflection you find in the F minor or A flat major blues scale. And yet again, we encounter the flat 7 and the flat 6 voicings that have led us to 1 in the past. Instead, we're led to 6, an F minor chord, F minor 11. But check out this voicing. It transposes down and down again. So you're not fooling anyone, Jesus. But I guess just as we subconsciously expect this pattern, it's broken by going up to an A flat chord with little movement in the right hand voicing. After the A flat 13 sharp 11 flat 9 chord, we cadence to a D flat major 13 sharp 11, which is the result of cadencing 5 to 1 in the key of D flat. And we jump up another fourth to G flat major 9 add 6. As we slightly change the voices on the top, create a D7 sharp 9 sharp 5 chord, and it's not functionally related to any of these chords. It's just voice leading, man. The D7 chord takes us up to E flat minor 11, and like a 2-1 motion in major, it takes us to D flat major 13 sharp 11 chord with this little arpeggio fill. And yet again, the flat 7 to the flat 6 movement we've already seen before. It looks like we're about to land back on 1, and we do, but before we do, we go up a fourth from E major 9 to A 13 sharp 11, which is a half step away from the bass note of A flat in our home key. Now, instead of landing on some A flat chord or a close cousin of it, we land on this voicing, which by looking ahead seeks to harmonize the melody. So while the notes are in the key of A flat, this chord is not functional, even if you can identify that this is an inversion voicing of a D flat major 9 chord. As the melody steps up from a middle C to a D flat, the voicing does too. And that just sounds, wow, I mean, it's kind of out there, isn't it? Is it a symbolism for the light, like literally? Now we turn to a functional sounding chord, the 3 chord, which we haven't encountered yet, and the melody notes fit right in. But look at this inner voice movement. That motion makes the first chord sound unresolved, even if it's not dissonant sounding. It resolves to an A flat major chord first inversion with an added second. But this inner voice leading continues on to the next chord. The next chord is a suspension resolution. The suspension is this, and the resolution is this. Which is the 4 chord. Right at just own, we play a 6 chord with extensions and then transpose that same voicing up a minor third and definitely step out of the key, which is another example of harmonizing the melody without regard for strict harmonic function. Here's this voicing again. And Jesus does not fool us again. He transposes the chord down a major third and then a minor third, all reflecting the melody. As we hit the chorus, we have this same voicing transposed up to meet the melody again and again. If you take away anything from this video, it's that you can harmonize any melody with this voicing. At Come On Show Them What, you see the C7 sharp 9 sharp 5 chord that signals we might land on a 1 chord. In this case, it would be an F minor, since C7 is the 5/7 of F minor. But we do a nice little tritone substitution, which is just literally playing the bass of a 5/7 chord and moving it up or down a tritone away. Either way, you would end up with the same note. And yes, we land on an F minor, but just a tad later than anticipated. Again, the melody takes us to this chord that's not really an A flat. And then we move up a whole step to a series of chords that harmonize the B flat note. We have E major 13 sharp 11, followed by an inner voice shift down to E flat minor 9 add 6, then to A flat major 9, and then an F minor 11 chord with the same voicing as we've seen before. As we repeat the same melodic phrase, we're hit with another version of harmonizing the same melody note. The chords here are A13 flat 9, A flat 9 add 6, and then landing on a 4 chord or a D flat chord, and then we just vibe there for a bit. Like before, we play around with that same voicing and attach it to the melody. And like before, we hit the C7, sharp 9, sharp 5, and by shifting its upper structure, which is an A flat major chord, down a whole step to G flat, we get another type of C7 chord. Then we move that A flat major chord back up and then do that tritone substitution to G flat 13 sharp 11, maintaining that A flat major chord in the right hand. And then we land on this chord that I consider to be a brief bright spot. So what do I mean by that? As the melody lands on C, we can harmonize it with the chords from the A flat major scale or from brighter keys in the circle of fifths, as long as it has the melody note C. Another possible interpretation would be saying that this is a major version of what could have otherwise been a 6th chord, which is minor. In that case, it would be an F minor chord, and now we're hearing an F major chord, which is a different twist on what we're expecting. After we do a little passing chord movement with the so what voicing, we land on the part. He harmonizes it with a B flat minor 9, followed by a C7 sharp 9 sharp 5. We land on the flat 7 chord, and it does take us back nicely to the 1 chord where Jesus finishes off with this little chord improv, which is basically a quote from the last time. I hope you were able to see some of the harmonic methods that Jesus uses. In some moments, we can see obvious things like transposition, but in others, we have to dig in deep to see exactly what he's doing with certain voicings. So those things might be 2-5-1s, or jumping around the circle of fifths, or harmonizing the melody non-functionally, and other voicing elements. But after going through this, it feels a bit exhausting to say that this is one of his tamer works. But don't worry, there's plenty to learn here, and maybe in the future we can get to some of those other crazy pieces that he does. I just thought it'd be fun to look at a pop song most people may already be familiar with and see it from the perspective of a Jesus Molina reharmonization. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing to this channel for more harmonic content, and I'll see you in the next one.